as a government of Kenya, we cannot hide our heads in the sand anymore. We have taken two deliberate steps. One is that we have so many things that can kill us in this country. Being in this country, you are a candidate for death. And because there's so many things competing for death, there's nothing wrong with adding GMO to that list. That is why we have deliberately decided to allow GMOs into this country.
Felt like an episode of 1,000 Ways to Die with that statement. So here we are with this debate. Linus, wow, that statement has really got the country talking.
It did. I can't help thinking, what if Moses Kuria was in charge of the Ministry of Health when the first case of COVID-19 was reported? Or indeed, I mean, God forbid if we got Ebola and he's the minister in charge of health. Would we add that to the list of the things that can kill us? I think the statement is in itself an admission of how clouded this debate on GMOs in Kenya is. It is a confirmation that indeed we don't have an official position. We just have interests that are playing out in the dark that are then guiding the whole debate on whether we should have GMOs or not. But really, who we should be hearing from right now are our scientific experts, who will then tell us this is good, this is bad. GMO is a very complex space, so complex that some of the analyses that have been put out there indicate that there's a lot of misinformation about GMOs. There's talk of can it cause cancer? Is it harmful? Yeah. And of course, the World Health Organization has repeatedly been confronted with such questions. And the Center for, I think the authority, the Drug and Food, FDA, Food and Drug Administration Authority in the US, both have been saying, there's nothing harmful about GMO foods. But I think the contention in Kenya is, we had, as a country, said before that we are not going the GMO route. Yeah. Until I think the 3rd of October this year, when President William Ruto chaired a cabinet meeting of cabinet secretaries from the previous administration, and declared that, the cabinet has decided that the ban on GMO is lifted. And so this is a debate that is still very much in the air with as little clarity as there is right now, as we know tonight.
About that, cabinet recommendation. So what we were told is that, the decision to lift the ban was based on a recommendation by a task force on GMOs and also, information from the National Biosafety Authority. What was not clear is, the recommendations of this task force have not been made public so that people can say, okay, we can interrogate and say, okay, these are the recommendations, and to get, a clearer understanding of how the decision was arrived at. And Linus, you talked about, the ban on GMO. That was actually done in 2012, and there was a worldwide study that had caused concern, and it was known as the Seralini study in 2012 that associated GMO with cancer in rats. That was done, by that survey. But listen, just like you said, with science, it's very complex. This is like those debates you have in the law where the law is very clear, but everybody can defend, different sides of the argument. And that is the case here. So there's many scientific studies that say, look, GMO is safe. It can help farmers adopt much faster to climate change. The idea is that, you're introducing all of these desired effects genetically into the crops, and that, the optimum and the uptake of that or the output for GMO would be less than 5 years, whereas for conventional breeding, like the grafting that we do, takes about 10 to 15 years for the outcome to be met. So there's all of these things. But then, there's also the reverse, which is, can it have other effects like creating, super weeds, I think is what they call it, the unintended harmful effects. And then, of course, there's also, the valid reasons from those in the religious sector who say, is man playing God? And if we start with plants, where does it end? Could we start creating desirable humans, designer babies, and that sort of thing. So there's arguments on both sides. That it is an emotive issue is no doubt, by the way, not just in Kenya, but the world over.
Yeah.
So one of the ways to start to treat this would have been to give people information. First of all, the recommendations of the task force that then led to the lifting of the ban, but also to start to educate people. And by the way, GMO is nothing foreign in this country. There's, lots of things that are being done with cassava, for instance. We have BT cotton in the country. And by the way, Kenya is not the only one. If you take a look at what's happening in Africa, we are one of 10 countries in Africa that have now adopted, GMO crops. The number was 3 in 2016, it moved to 2022, and there's 70 countries around the world. And those African countries, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Burkina Faso, Malawi, Nigeria, and all of these are adopting GMO seeds, which, by the way, are faster maturing, disease-resistant crops, right? So there's arguments for and there's arguments against. But one of the things that needs to be done is treat this argument with sensitivity and come from a point of knowledge.
Yeah.
Help us understand, okay, there's 4 million people facing drought and hunger. This is the reason we've taken this decision. But the way in which the government is handling it then just goes to, seep into all of those fears about, GMO and are they safe? Because those concerns are valid. The ones who say, this is a good thing towards food security, are valid, but the fears are valid as well. But I'm afraid about the manner in which, this has been handled. It's almost being force-fed. And let's not forget, by the way, that in as much as it's a food security issue, there's also commercial considerations. And often it is the commercial considerations that take precedence.
Absolutely.
And this is by big pharma, this is by, big multinational companies. There's things about who owns the seeds, the GMO seeds, and intellectual property, where a farmer is told, now you cannot use that seed anymore because I own the patent to that. And so smallholder farmers who, are often then taken for a ride by the big companies. So all of these things are there on the side. And look, those concerns are there, and they're already being raised in the country. Let's listen to MPs and also Archbishop, Anthony Muheria, who also raised his concerns about the manner in which this debate or this lifting of the ban is being done in the country.
Mimi nimuulize Mheshimiwa Waziri Kuria kwamba yeye si mbunge wa Katundu ile ya zamani tena, ni waziri, awache kutoa matamshi ambayo tunaita kwa kizungu reckless, because those are completely reckless statements.
He needs to be careful with what he makes. Roadside declarations are a thing of the past. And therefore, before he makes any statement, you cannot compare GMO with death.
The path that the minister has taken is very dangerous. Even what they've done right now, we understand the boats are docking. That is illegal.
The Kenyans deserve respect and not spite. And in this matter, they do deserve an apology. It is not good to joke with death or to gamble with the life of Kenyans as if it was Russian roulette. For this reason, we feel this matter is more than just a joke when we speak about GMOs.
And you see, that is where we are and what we're talking about with respect to this conversation, Francis.
Absolutely. And you see, I think the biggest challenge we also have in our country is that we trust politicians more than probably we trust
experts,
our experts
scientists,
and our professionals.
Right.
This is a matter that we should have and we should allow the experts and the scientists and the researchers to have a field day. They're the guys who should be explaining to us what's happening, what's safe, what is not safe. These are the people who should be guiding the nation insofar as certain matters are concerned. When we have legal issues, we see the Law Society of Kenya, take a front seat and explain to Kenyans about, let's say, constitutional issues, legal issues, and so on and so forth. When we have constructions, and buildings that are collapsing, every so often we will call to the studio experts from the National Construction Authority, the architects, the engineers,
yeah, right.
Because that is their field. I don't know how and why we are allowing the politicians to politic with this matter and we take their word as the major thing. I think this is a matter that we should allow our professionals, and we have them in plenty. They're the guys who should be guiding the country and telling us, if we go this route, these are the consequences. If we go this route, these are the consequences. The biggest and most unfortunate situation that we face as a country is that the food security question is taking the second level of this discussion. The first level of this discussion is the commercial aspect of it.
Yeah.
And you see, this commercial aspect also funds very many things, including politics.
Yeah.
So the moment commercial interests are way higher than the food security concerns and questions, then we end up with the situation that we are in currently. And I think maybe it is also a good opportunity. Every time we've had these kind of situations and debates, we hold a national conference of something.
Yeah.
Why can't we then hold a national conference on let's say, GMOs, invite experts.
Right, and invite Kenyans who are concerned, right, ask their questions.
Let people, first of all, be educated about this situation, and let the experts advise the country on the way to go, such that if, in the event we land in a problem, then it will be easy to pinpoint where the challenge came from, because we will have left the professionals to guide the discussion as opposed to politicking about it. Currently, as we speak, you will see a pattern. Politicians from Wing A are supporting GMO. Politicians from Wing B are opposing it. So that is the unfortunate situation that we face.
But Francis, in this instance, it has been a little interesting, because you've seen politicians from Wing A, you know, who would be allied to, you know, the ruling coalition.
Siding with the other.
Siding, you know, disagreeing with the decision.
But you see what? You know why? Because they come from a region that grows maize.
And we will get to that,
It's about protecting your turf politically.
Absolutely. Okay, interesting one. And we'll get to that in a moment. I just want to pick up on something that you said that was important about, you know, big commercial interests. And commercial interests, you know, sometimes delve into the political and, you know, sort of get wound up in that. And I believe, you know, those mamas are there, and the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, did respond to that with allegations. You know, some were saying, is the president a puppet of the West? And this is why we have seen being pushed in that direction. We've seen several delegations from foreign countries that have made their way here, you know, with the new administration. And we've seen, you know, billionaire philanthropists as well making their way into the country and making a strong case for GMO. Is the president a puppet of the West when it comes to the GMO case? Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua says no. Listen.
President William Ruto is nobody's puppet. I want to ask them to leave the president alone. The West is supporting us, and we are happy. And that engagement with the West will continue. We'll engage the East, and we'll engage anybody who means well for this country, to protect our national interests and for the benefit of our people.
Well, it's an interesting perspective there, and I think the West was introduced for the simple reason that President Ruto has hosted, I think, 3 or 4 American delegations now, including those that are associated with agriculture. You remember the committee from, I think, was it the state of Senate, Oklahoma, the Senate committee from Oklahoma. It was all, you know, related to agriculture. Is he a puppet? I think that's harsh, and I think it would be an exaggeration. But as a newly elected president, he's only 3 months in office, is as vulnerable as a village person is on the streets of Nairobi, where you can lose your phone, you can lose your wallet, just because you are very new to the space. And quite frankly, we do not know foreign relations as a strong point for William Ruto before he was elected president. This is a new space. He must really start engaging. He must really understand the diplomatic space, how it operates. And there are those vulnerabilities. It's so new. I mean, what else can best illustrate than the handling of the Sahrawi issue?
Fertilizer question.
You come in and say, we reverse the recognition of Sahrawi Republic, without understanding what that would mean to the dynamics of the Maghreb politics. We have relations with Morocco, we have relations with Algeria, we have relations with Tunisia, we have relations with Egypt, and Sahrawi issue is an emotive issue on that side. So when you touch it, you know, you touch one button and it can trigger so many other things. And I think there's a lot of listening any new administration must do. A lot of listening to your experts, especially in the diplomatic space. What is going on? What is the West doing right now? What is the East doing right now? There's a lot of listening that the president and his team must do at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or with the diplomats that they have deployed all around the world, so that what the moves you make do not become diplomatic embarrassments, because they can easily, very, very easily, step in the wrong direction.
That's right. I just want to make one final comment on the GMO before we move to, you know, the maize importation issue. And I think, you know, from some of the comments I even see online, let's resist the urge to think that Kenyans don't understand what GMO is, you know, and to say, well, you know, but this is a complex scientific process. Let's be clear about one thing. All Kenyans want the right to food and to quality food. In fact, it is enshrined in our constitution, the right to food and to quality food. And they have the right to question whether the foods that are being provided, imported, or whatever policies the government is setting in place, whether those are good for them and their families and their children and their loved ones. So to try and have a conversation that is above Kenyans and say, but this is GMO and it's complex stuff, I think, you know, we need to get away from that. The basics is all Kenyans want food safety, and they want their fears to be allayed.
And don't make it a,
don't make it a class issue, exactly. And will those fears be irrational, some of them? Probably. But still, those are fears that Kenyans have, and as human beings, and that those must be addressed in a way that feels respectful to them. And this, are there benefits to GMO? Certainly. I mean, if you take a look at GMO, the GMBT cotton, it's tolerant to the African bollworm. With the cassava, it makes them tolerant to cassava brown streak disease, maize with the stem borer. There are benefits. Are there, you know, some issues of concern? Certainly. Are there gray areas of this that we do not understand? Genetic science is fairly complex, yes, and there are some gray areas that we still don't know, and some things that we'll continue to discover, certainly. So just to treat this all with respect and to have a national conversation as opposed to it seeming like it is directives that are being forced down our throats, pun intended.
And one more thing that this GMO debate ought not to be about. It should not be about creating misconceptions about what GMOs actually look like, because an impression has been created that, oh, we're fixing food security. Yeah. So in the minds of people who are not very well conversant with what you're talking about, they'll think of the Jack and the magic beanstalk. You remember that, you know, suddenly there's a lot of food that will sprout out of the desert in Turkana and northern Kenya.
And in 3 months we'll be good and there'll be no more hunger.
Yes, it's not true. It's not true. We still have to go the same steps of labor, you know, farming. And if you go the Galana Kulalu way, even if the seeds are genetically modified,
it'll still
the result will be the same.
Yeah, and just to understand that there are many issues around food security, and GMO is not necessarily the silver bullet. Those GMO seeds will need water, you know, among other things, which is a basic one. Now,